Hi, I'm Ray Browning, and I'm with Colorado State University in the Department of Health and Exercise Science. And I study physical activity, how people move in their environment. And we were contacted by Tubbs Snowshoes to investigate how snowshoe frame design affected how people walked on snow. So what we did in this study is we wanted to compare snowshoe designs across walking at two different speeds on level ground and compare it to overground walking, so our traditional sort of walking around in the environment. And we also wanted to look at downhill, thinking that, well, maybe downhill is a place where we would see differences in how the snowshoes were designed, especially because you've got that long tail. So we hypothesized, based on the lack of existing information, that we didn't think there would be very much difference between people walking on overground, on hard level ground surface, and snowshoeing. But that there would be some differences when you walk downhill. If you had a snowshoe that had a flexible tail, would change how you walk slightly differently than if it was a rigid tail, which is kind of the standard approach. So in order to test the hypothesis that snowshoe walking would be similar to overground walking and that downhill walking would be different across a snowshoe with a flexible tail versus a rigid tail, we recruited 12 people to participate in the study, and each person had to walk over ground on a hard surface at slow and fast speed, and then we had them replicate those speeds while walking in two different kinds of snowshoes, one with a flexible tail and then one with a rigid plastic snowshoe. Then they went to a downhill section, which was about the same angle as a beginner or intermediate ski trail, about 14 degrees, and had them do downhill walking, again using the two different kinds of snowshoes, but only at one speed. And in order to understand what was happening in terms of how the legs were moving, we use these really cool little inertial measurement units or sensors. And what these do is they keep track of the position of each segment of the leg as you walk. So if you have this one attached to the thigh and this one attached to the lower leg, as these move when the person's walking, we get joint angles between the knee and the hip and the ankle. And that's the data that we then subsequently analyzed to look, well, what was different between those things across the conditions? So what we found when we looked at the joint angles was something that was a little bit surprising. We thought that during level walking, of course, that the gait would be similar, and that wasn't the case. When people walked over ground without snowshoes, they have this sort of pronounced heel strike. So they strike with the heel and the foot comes down. When they wore snowshoes, they actually shuffled. So they brought the foot more horizontal throughout the gait cycle, not a real pronounced heel strike, which was a really surprising and interesting finding. In downhill, that's where we saw the differences that we thought we would see, which is that when you have a flexible tail combined with downhill walking, it actually really slowed down the rate at which the snowshoe came in contact with the snow. And in fact, the distance between the back of the heel and the tail combined with a flexible material really influenced how fast that foot came in contact with the snow. Now those results would suggest that you would have less of an impact or less shock along the leg, probably less muscle activity, and less fatigue with snowshoeing. Through this research, we gained an understanding of the differences in how people walk on snow versus over ground, which was fascinating to us. It also highlights Tubbs' commitment to using that research to design products that really optimize the experience of the end user.